Hello everybody and welcome to another Figure Friday. Today we will be reviewing, as you might guess, Polynian number 3, Yume. This is the third figure in the Polynian line. She comes just after Clover and Shamrock. And unlike the two before her, she is not naked. If you remember our previous figure, Shamrock, you can see that he doesn't really have much clothing to work with here. Unless, of course, you put some accessories on him. Yume, however, is actually sculpted to look like she's wearing a sailor fuku. Or at least I think that was the intent. Regardless of the intent, let's just take a look at the box. As we can see already, it's the standard figure on the front, with a lower opacity version of them to the side, doing a different pose with a different facial expression. Let's open up the window display. And as we can see inside, we have pictures of actually both Clover and Shamrock, and then pictures of Yume here, and there is Yume herself with a film covering the actual window, and there's our figure. The side we have her saluting, the other side we get to see a little bit of her butt, and on the back there's plenty of poses and some shots that reveal her accessories, but let's get into that right now. And here we have our figure. She actually looks very similar to Clover without her hairpiece on, and if we look at the back, we'll actually see that there's some accessories here which include the hair, so let's bust it open. As we can see, Yume's a little bit different. Some of her accessories are up front and some are in the back, but what we have up here is her little briefcase. We have two faces, of course included with the one that she has, giving her 3 in total, one angry, one happy, and a sword. This figure has so much packaging, so much excessive plastic, but as we can see here, we have her hair bow, we actually have her hair in a ponytail separate, we have the standard hexagonal base, we have her little thrusters that connect to her hips, a pair of open hands, and a pair of hands that would hold an accessory that are also somewhat closed, actually fully closed. And they all come in separate bags, which is a bit different, but let's get this all open. Now here's the actual figure herself. This is Yume, and she is very metallic if you can't tell. This is zoomed in a bit, but as you might see, her paint finish is very shiny. It's not just the standard shine either. It's metallic, sort of almost like an electric blue on the uniform, and her hair has quite a bit of shine as well. I'm almost certain they re-released this figure later, and I think they actually made it so that it was less shiny. So I think some people actually didn't like it, but I think it's definitely interesting. But from what we can see so far, I really like the sculpt. She's got quite a bit of heft to her because she's got more than just a naked body this time. She has these cuffs around her feet where her shoes are. She doesn't have just standard feet. She actually has what looks like little shoes, the little cuffs that go around her ankles. We come up to her skirt, and of course that in and of itself is like sort of like a hover skirt, almost like a Gundam or something. And you look around the back, she has a little bow on her butt, which is pretty cute. And then the vest, of course, has its own area where it actually separates from the waist. A bit of a transparent plastic tie. It is not flexible, so be careful with that. And then her shoulders are, of course, to replicate what would be sleeves. So she has little sleeves for her sailor outfit and a pair of bracers that I guess sort of look like cuffs, even though I don't know if she would have cuffs there as well as cuffs up top. But either way, I do like it. Her hair has a bit of green in it, some sort of design almost looking like a bow, and the other side does not have that. The back of her head has a slot where you could plug something. And that, of course, is for her hair. The hair plugs into this bow. There's a bit of a area there that actually looks like it would support a sphere, which allows it to poke out the other end. Then that plugs into the back of her head. Okay, side note. This is one of the tightest joints I have ever tried to plug in. The back of her head has a hole where you would plug her ponytail, and I actually had to detach her head just to make sure that I wasn't breaking anything. It's probably going to go in a little bit easier now that I've already done it once, but man, that was almost impossible to get in. So be very careful with this because it will just fit. You could break the figure this way. Okay, so while I do like this figure, I will say that that is a huge flaw in and of itself. Trying to plug her hair in is really, really difficult. It has to plug in first to this, and then that all plugs into the back of her head. So you actually don't need to fully insert the peg that's on the ponytail, but damn, if it is not difficult to do. I would certainly recommend putting it in there once to try to really get it in and maybe shave a tiny bit of the plastic off through the insertion, then pull it back out and try it again with the ponytail holder attached to it. Be careful, folks. You don't want to break this figure. Another thing that I noticed was that she has something on the side of her head that resembles a clover, which I think is kind of funny because when you plop off these pieces, she looks suspiciously like Clover. And she has the same color eyes as well. It almost makes me think that maybe she's some sort of an upgraded version of Clover. But yes, you can also take these little pieces off that are a little bit of extra hair, and they plug into their ears. So that's something. I guess you could take them off if you really like, but she looks better with them in. Now that the hair's in, it is posable. You can swivel it. It can go up and down, and of course, that can pivot a little bit if you want to move it, and there's really not terribly much you can do, but I guess for action posing it is there. Now, posability, let's talk about that. She is very much like the other Polynian figures in which she has all of these little ball peg joints here, though she does have a little bit of extra chunk to her because of the way she is sculpted, so her range of motion is a little bit limited. As we see, she gets the standard up and down, a swivel on either side, and that's pretty much it you can get out of that. Then the elbow is decently posable. Of course, it has a swivel, it has an in and out, as does the wrist joint for the hand. Now that extra kibble that she has does kind of interfere with her legs as well. They go in and out, but only to a certain level because of that chunk of her skirt. Now they do have a full swivel, and of course her knees are pretty much completely unhindered by any of her parts, though her ankle is almost impossible to do anything with unless you took off this little bracer, which I don't even want to try to do right now. She also has these small pieces that attach via a peg. They go onto her skirt, and to me they look like thrusters. So yeah, that's that. Now let's get to the last thing that we really need to talk about. You may have noticed it already, but I'll just tilt her a little bit to give you an idea of what we're talking about. Yes, if we remove her waist, which happens very easily, she has fallen apart multiple times during this video, and we lift her skirt off of her body, we get what might be the best feature of all. Robot pantsu. Yes, she has underwear. I mean, I suppose it's only fitting, right? She's the first one to have clothes on, so I guess she'd better have some underwear. That's pretty cute, but I gotta say, it's very unnatural for her to be walking around in just her shirt of her school uniform. Okay, so now that I've had some time with the figure and I've been able to try to pose it and take some pictures of it, I've gotta say, this has been an incredible letdown. This figure so far has been my least favorite figure I think I've ever tried to pose. The only thing that comes close is Strength from the Black Rock Shooter TV anime series. That was hard to pose for a whole different host of reasons, whereas this one is inherently just not designed very well. There's so much about this that's wrong that I honestly struggled to get the poses that I did, and I really don't want to have to take any extra footage to try to even show you guys what's wrong with this thing. Since it has that skirt, it is almost impossible to do anything decent with the legs. I was able to get a couple poses where I made the legs spread out a little bit, but any higher and they start to lift up the skirt enough that actually loosens the bow in the back and then causes all kinds of alignment issues. The hover skirts are of course very cumbersome as well, and if you keep them on while you're trying to pose it, they're just going to fall off because they're attached by very small pegs. I don't get how they got this one so wrong. Another problem is the waist. Now, the waist is the worst part about this whole figure. Like the other figures, it has two pegs in which it actually plugs the middle part of the waist into the hips and pelvis. Now, normally this isn't that much of a problem, but somehow with this figure, it becomes a huge issue. I can't tell you how many times the waist fell apart and I had to reattach it, and I pressed as hard as I could to try to keep everything snug, but then as soon as I start moving the figure again, it detaches from the waist. Another big problem with the midsection of the figure is the tie. Because that transparent pink plastic does not flex at all, it has a very limited range of motion, and the thing cannot lean forward almost at all. It essentially makes that ball peg joint in the middle that connects the torso to the waist completely useless. The figure can lean backward so that it can push its chest up, but it cannot lean forward and look further down at its feet. If you lean too far, you're going to wind up breaking that tie or scratching the stomach of the figure. And I went online to double check, and yes, there was a re-release version of this figure that actually changed the paint. But that's the only thing that changed. I looked, and it said that the paint was now a pearl matte type color. All that means is that they made it less glossy and more matte, which is good because I think that looks best on these figures, and for them to actually go metallic with one of them randomly was a really stupid decision. This is an incredible letdown for me. I almost have to say that I hate this figure for how hard it is to pose. I really pray that none of the other figures in the line have this kind of problem, because honestly, if I had to say it, I would say avoid buying Yume. This figure is pretty much useless when it comes to actually posing. You can't do anything where it's laying down. You really can't even do much with plugging in a stand to the back of it because of the ponytail. And ultimately, as cute as it is, it just doesn't have enough range of motion to actually do anything fun. Clover and Shamrock get it so right that this is just criminal when you take a look, because they took so many steps back with this one. I'm sorry to be so negative, but I honestly cannot see anything good about this figure, and I'm really upset that it's this bad. Now, coming down the line, I know that Ymir has a tie as well, and if that thing's anywhere near as cumbersome as this one, then God, that figure's going to be a pain in the butt too. Regardless of all the bad stuff, I am going to continue with my reviews of these figures because I do own them all and I do rather like the designs. Though I will say that if this problem persists and other figures fall apart the way that this one does and there's inflexible pieces, then there's going to be a long and arduous road ahead of us. I give Yume a 5 out of 10, and the only reason she gets 5 points is because of her design. Her design is nice, the figure is cute, and it does feel good in hand. It's a solid figure, but unfortunately, the way that it's designed does not allow you to do anything decent with it. That being said, please stay tuned. There will be more figures coming up, and there are also some other figures for you to check out. If you want to look at some of the previous figure reviews, you can take a look at the videos posted on screen. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe and comment if you have this figure, or comment if you want this figure. Don't buy this figure, but keep collecting and have fun with the figures you have.